When I was a kid, my parents would sometimes bring me down to my aunt and uncle's place to stay for the weekend. Mainly, I'd spend time playing with my two cousins who were around the same age as me. They lived on a small farm with plenty of open space, and we could run around doing pretty much whatever we wanted. If we thought we could get away with it, the three of us would sometimes cross over to the neighboring farm about half a mile away. It had been abandoned for decades, with a scattering of derelict buildings and other structures still standing on the property, just begging to be explored. This was of course a gold mine for three adventurous young boys such as ourselves, especially after my cousins told me stories about the deaths that took place in the house. It was pretty classic fare. Man goes crazy, axe murders his entire family, hangs himself, returns every night as an angry spirit looking for new victims. Good, grisly stuff. Even at that age, I knew they were probably making it up, or at least embellishing old rumors. But seeing as how the setting lent itself so well to such tales, I allowed myself to buy into it. One afternoon, we decided to play hide and seek. When it was my turn to hide, I ran off for a flimsy brown barn that had living quarters on top, and climbed the stairs looking for a good spot. There was still furniture inside, and personal belongings lay scattered across the floor. I maneuvered over broken dishes, tattered clothes, and crumbling books, eventually coming to a small room with a closet. Jackpot. There were even long black dresses still hanging on the rod that I could hide behind. I stepped inside and managed to force shut the folding door. My only illumination was a slit of sunlight that shone through the crack in the door from a nearby window. I crouched down with knees tucked into chest and waited. Some time passed and there was still no sign of my seekers. I waited some more, debating if and when I should give myself up. After nearly an hour, this was starting to get boring. My head drooped. I woke with a jerk. It was pitch black. Drowsy and confused, I forgot for a minute where I was or what I had been doing. As it came back to me, the realization that it was now nighttime and that I had been abandoned here filled me with sinking dread in the pit of my stomach. I tried to get up, but a sudden cramp in my calf kept me grounded. I squirmed about, waiting for it to pass, when I heard a door slamming shut downstairs, and instantly froze. One of my cousins? There was a brief period of silence, then footsteps at the bottom of the stairs. But not just footsteps, a thud too. After every other step. These weren't the footfalls of a child. They were slow, heavy, deliberate. I held my breath, praying they would go away. They did not. The noises continued to ascend. After another moment of silence, the walking resumed. This time along with a steady scraping sound, like something heavy being dragged across the floorboards. The footsteps made their way through the debris and wandered aimlessly through the various rooms. I thought I could smell something faintly putrid. The constant scrape sent cold shivers coursing down my arms and back. My worst fears were realized when the steps reached the bedroom doorway. They got closer and closer and finally stopped directly in front of the closet door. I couldn't see a thing. After an agonizing pause, they continued on over to the other side of the room and out the doorway again. They faded away down the hallway. I waited for what seemed like an eternity. There were no more sounds now, and I was trying to build up enough courage to open the door and flee. Three things happened simultaneously just then. I was bombarded with a smell I can only describe as fresh roadkill. I heard raspy breathing behind me in the dark closet, and I felt hot breath against the nape of my neck. That was enough for me to hurtle myself out from the confines of that nightmare space, relying on memory and scant moonlight to navigate through the darkened house. All the while, I heard footsteps chasing behind me, closing in with terrifying speed. It was a clumsy, torturous escape full of trips and bumps and blind stumbling. I never looked back. At least, not until I had burst out the front door and into the country night. And when I did turn around, I saw absolutely nothing. There were no more footsteps and nobody was chasing me. That didn't stop me from running though, all the way back to my aunt and uncle's house. There was a police car in the driveway when I got back. My parents were there too, worried sick. Everybody demanded to know where I had been. Apparently, when my cousins still hadn't found me by evening, they'd returned home to tell their parents. Eventually, the police were called in and informed me that they had already scoured every building on the farm. The insinuation that I was lying about my whereabouts didn't go unnoticed. None of it made any sense. It wasn't until years later that one of my cousins filled in a final piece of the story. He and his brothers had spent hours searching for me like they said, but the part they didn't tell anyone was that they thought they spotted me in the window of the bedroom I was hiding in. And when they got closer, they saw that it wasn't me. A young boy neither of them recognized was smiling and waving down at them and gesturing for them to come upstairs. That's when they ran back home. All of this while I slept in the closet. A few months ago, I was over at my friend's house down the block. In fact, that's where most of my friends on the block actually are. I'm 16 years old right now, the second oldest out of the group of kids down the block. There's Alan, who's 17, Dan, who's in the same grade as me but a little younger, Johnny, who's 14, Daniela, who's also 14, Nick, who's 13, and Tom, who's only 12 years old. There's a big age gap between some of us, but we're really the only kids on the entire block. Me and Dan were the closest friends, and we kind of just met all the other kids who lived around the area while we hung out originally. It started to become our Friday night tradition to play a big game of Manhunt by Daniela and Nick's house. We don't live in a typical suburban neighborhood. Our area is a lot more spacious and overall has a lot less people and houses. And for that reason, there wasn't a lot going on in our area, but it also made the game that much more fun. It was our turn to hide first. I had 3 other kids on my team, but more notably, I had Dan on my team. Me and Dan both went next door to Mr. Nelson's old house. He was an old man who passed away a few years ago, and since then, no one has bought the house, leaving it vacant and a perfect property to add space for our game. Me and Dan went to the back section of the property by the lake, where we found a perfect hiding spot in some of his bushes. Dan, however, wanted to try something crazy and entered the vacant house through a sliding window, so I waited alone in the bushes. The goal of the game was to get back to Nick's house, which was always considered home base. A big part of the game is waiting. I was in those bushes for like 5 minutes, until I finally saw 2 kids from the other team entering the backyard looking for us. They were making a lot of noise, making their presence known. Once they left, the 2 of them continued even further down the block, giving us the perfect chance to run. I looked around at all the windows of the house, hoping Dan would be standing near one of them for me to wave him on. And when I looked up to one of the upstairs windows, I was relieved to see his head looking down to me. I waved him on, letting him know it's time to go, but he didn't move. Now I wasn't sure if he could see me. I went over to the window that he entered through, opened it, entered the house, and yelled up into the house calling Dan's name. I'm not even exaggerating when I say I felt like my heart stopped when I heard Dan's voice only a few feet away from me saying, "Dude, shh." I asked him how he got downstairs so quickly, and he just looked confused. He then told me he was sitting down here this whole time. At that same moment, we both looked up to the ceiling as there was a creaking sound coming from upstairs. We both hopped back out the window and ran back to Nick's house, where we called the game off. We went to ask Dan's dad if somebody had moved into the home, but he was positive that nobody had lived there for 3 years. Me, Alan, Dan, and Dan's dad all went over to the house, where we entered the same way we had earlier. Dan's dad was familiar with the house, as he used to be good friends with Mr. Nelson. He led the way upstairs and to the bathroom with a window I had seen someone standing at. He flicked on the lights, and besides a crumpled up reddish-brown blanket on the floor, the room was empty. We went through the entire house and found nothing. Dan's dad really didn't know what to do from there, so he just said if any of us, including him, ever see anything or anyone in that house, we would report it to the police immediately. It's been a few months already and we haven't seen anything since, but I know that somebody, besides Dan, was in that house that night.
once met this dude named Matt when I was out with friends at a bar one summer. I was out with a big group, and Matt and I made friends at the bar, vibing over the Cubs game that was on. My group kind of dispersed away from me as I spoke with Matt, so it wasn't like Matt really spoke to any of my friends. We ended up exchanging Instagrams, and he had a decent amount of followers on Instagram, and his pictures made him seem like a normal 20-something-year-old dude who likes to go out, travel, and stay active. After we exchanged info, I went to go find my group. Honestly, whenever you bro out with another guy while you're at a bar, the odds of ever actually contacting each other again after exchanging info are slim to none. You always act like you'll hit them up, but come the next day when you're sober, you just have no interest. Well, the next day, which was a Saturday, I went out to another bar/restaurant with my friends. This was an outdoor spot on the water. It was for my friend Tyler's birthday. I put something on my Instagram story as we all sang at the bar for him. After about an hour, we were done with dinner and just hanging around the outside section of the bar when I got a tap on my shoulder. I turned around and it was Matt. He dabbed me up with a smile and said this was his favorite Saturday night spot. I introduced Matt more officially to my friends this time, saying, "You guys remember Matt?" Even if they hadn't really spoken to him, they did see him the night before. Well, as the night went on, Matt kind of hung around for a while, and it was fine because everyone was drunk, including him, and everyone was just having a good time. The next time I saw Matt was when he invited me golfing on a hot day. Honestly, I suck at golfing, but it's something I want to get better at, so when he invited me early one Sunday morning, I went. I think it was literally the following weekend after I saw him last. It was just him and I going. I tried to get a couple of my friends to go, but they were too hungover and said it was too early. Matt and I just vibed playing golf. I think it was only 9 holes. It took us like 2 hours. Afterwards, we got food, and then I went home to relax before work the next day. I saw Matt one more time out after that, before he invited me on a hiking trip with him to Arizona. Honestly, Arizona and the Grand Canyon were always on my bucket list. I just checked the dates with work and confirmed I was able to go first, and I was an immediate yes. I asked Tyler and a couple of other friends to come with, but they were heavy no's. They said they couldn't get the time off work and needed to save money, the typical responses from any of my friends when I try to get them on a trip. I asked Matt if any of his boys were going, and he said nah, he was going solo dolo. I actually hadn't met any of Matt's friends yet. His Instagram painted him as this super popular guy though, so I didn't find it weird. We flew out on August 15th, and our return flights to Chicago were August 18th. We landed at night. Matt rented a car for the weekends, and on the way to the Airbnb, we stopped for food and alcohol. By the time we got to the Airbnb, it was late. We had a couple of beers when we got there, and I could tell that Matt was down to stay up longer, but I was admittedly shot and wanted to go to sleep. This was when I realized there was only one bed in the Airbnb. I had never asked him to confirm that there were 2 bedrooms. When I brought it up, he pointed to the couch I was sitting on and said it's a pull-out couch. He then said relax and that he's not going to charge me for the Airbnb. Honestly, a free stay in Arizona, I couldn't complain about the couch. I pulled out the sofa bed, set up the sheets, and went to sleep. It was surprisingly comfortable. In the middle of the night, I woke up to Matt walking through the living room to the kitchen to get water. I'm a light sleeper. The sound of a pin drop will make me wake up. I rolled over and went back to sleep. The next morning, Matt woke me up early. It was a sunny, gorgeous day, and we drove straight to the Grand Canyon. I had no idea just how massive it truly was, or how many individual trail options there were. We hiked the Bright Angel, I think. I didn't realize how out of shape I was until that day. Matt was perfectly fine, laughing and telling me to keep up while I was dripping in sweat and out of breath. We took numerous breaks, which we used to take a million amazing pictures. It was beautiful. Eventually, we got back to the car. We had been hiking for over 2 to 3 hours, and I needed food. We stopped by a deli on the way back. It was a long drive back to Phoenix, and when we got there, we took a midday nap, and then after that, we explored around Phoenix. And of course, in Matt fashion, we drank at multiple bars. I barely knew the guy, but I could already see he liked his alcohol. Fast forward, we got really, really drunk. But I think I got drunker, and I'm not sure how, because Matt was downing as many drinks as me. We had to leave the rental on the street and Uber back to the Airbnb. It was late. Time flew by somehow. I don't remember much besides Matt blasting music in the Airbnb for a bit and my plugging my phone in next to the couch. I guess I just went to sleep after that. That night, I woke up randomly, probably a couple of hours after I fell asleep. My bladder was about to explode, and my mouth was drier than the Grand Canyon. I got off the couch and headed toward the bathroom, but I heard something. A crack in the floor, like a crack from pressure. I scanned around the dark room with my eyes and saw nothing, so I went to the bathroom. While I was in there, midstream, I heard a door clicking shut. It had to be Matt's bedroom door. When I finished peeing, I went to try Matt's door, but it was locked. I knocked on the door, but there was no answer. Whatever, I went back to the couch and fell back asleep pretty easily. The next morning, I woke up at like 8 a.m., head throbbing. The first thing I noticed was my phone. It was in a weird position. I had it charging last night and left it laying on the floor next to the couch bed, but now it was sitting on the table next to the couch and it was unplugged. I was questioning why I might have done this, but ultimately my answer was simple. I was just super drunk. That day, we obviously didn't do any hiking, otherwise I would have puked. We just Ubered to the car and then did some driving around, exploring different neighborhoods, scenery, and checking out the botanical gardens. I didn't really want to drink that day, but later on, Matt convinced me. And wouldn't you know it, it was another night of getting really, really drunk. Our flight was at like 1 p.m. the following day, so at least we didn't have to worry about getting up really early. We got back to the Airbnb late again. I'd say between 1 and 2 a.m. this time. Matt insisted on letting me sleep in the bed that night, just because it was fair. Honestly, I didn't argue. I eventually took my bag to his room and then said goodnight and shut the door. I didn't lock it. Not that it mattered, because the locks from what I remembered had those doorknobs with locks that you could easily unlock with like a butter knife or something. I wish I could say the story ended there and that we went home in peace the next day. Well, I woke up that night, probably not long after I fell asleep. I didn't know what woke me up at first. It's like waking up to a sound, but you didn't fully consciously hear that sound because you were still technically asleep when it caused you to wake up. I looked around the room, and then for my phone. My phone was missing. I had it plugged in next to the bed, and had the phone on the bed next to me, but now the cord was just dangling from the outlet to the ground with no phone. How could this happen again? I looked on one side of the bed on the floor, and then the other, and I jumped up and screamed at the top of my lungs when I saw Matt laying face down, sprawled out on that side of the bed on the floor. He looked up, looking like he'd just woken up from a deep sleep. I shouted, "What are you doing?" He looked around the room, acting confused, like he didn't know how he got there. He stood up and said that he must have been so blacked out that he just walked in here to go to bed, but then remembered I was in the bed and he crashed on the floor. But that didn't make sense because he was on the side of the bed further from the door. I then accused him of taking my phone, and he played dumb. He said I should check under the bed, maybe it fell. Then he got on his knees, looked under the bed, and instantly said, "Bro, here it is," and he pulled it out from under the bed. I looked at him, and I genuinely felt like I was staring at a different person now. Who was this guy? Did he really try getting into my phone twice? I told him I'll just go back to the couch, but he insisted he would, and then he left the room. You bet your ass I locked the door this time. If it weren't for the phone, sure, I'd just see it as he was really drunk and did something goofy, like come pass out on the floor, but I was detecting bullshit there. He took my phone, and I know it. Since I was still kind of drunk, I didn't really have much trouble falling back asleep. Once again, I wish it ended there, but it didn't. I woke up one more time that night, and this time, I quickly realized why. At the foot of my bed was Matt standing there, but all I could really see was his silhouette. For some reason, I didn't jump or scream this time. He sat down on the bed and started rubbing my foot, and that's when I screamed at him to get out. He wouldn't move, so I had to physically push him off the bed and out the bedroom door. I started packing my clothes into my bag, and then quickly packed all my toiletries and whatever else I packed. He didn't say a word. He sat upright on the couch watching me like a creepy NPC the entire time. It was the most unsettling part. I called an Uber to the airport. I wasn't staying there another minute. He didn't try to stop me. I got to the airport just as the sun was starting to rise, and as hard as I tried to sleep, I couldn't. My mind was just racing. I waited there the entire time for the flight. I paid like $35 to change my seat so I wouldn't be next to Matt. I looked out the window the entire time the plane was boarding so I wouldn't have to make eye contact with him. I didn't tell any of my friends until later that day. I just needed time to process and digest everything. A couple of my friends said, "See, I told you he was weird," and pointed out that both times we ran into him, he was alone. It got me also thinking that the only reason he ran into me at the outdoor bar was because he saw my Instagram story and probably came there. Actual stalker behavior. I blocked his number and Instagram, but before doing so, I went to one of his older Instagram posts where he was with friends. No one was tagged in the picture, but I looked at the comments, and there was one comment from a guy who looked like he was in the picture. I saw that Matt wasn't even following him or vice versa. I took it upon myself to DM the guy, asking if he was still friends with Matt. The guy responded back within 10 minutes saying this: "Nah, guy's a freak, run away." From there, he told me about his own experience along with the other guys who used to be friends with him, who all had to cut him off. The guy untagged himself for Matt's photo, but he said he can't forcibly get him to take down the picture. He wasn't surprised at all when I told him what had happened in Arizona, and the guy's response was, "Guy should be in jail." It's crazy that I thought Matt was just a normal dude who was looking for a bro, but he ended up being a potentially dangerous predator. I still just want to know what he was trying to access on my phone. This happened last summer, around mid-July. I was home from college for a few weeks, and I was just trying to enjoy the break before my next semester started. My name's Kyle, and I live in Maryland. I had been talking with my two closest friends, Jason and Marcus, about doing something together. Just the three of us, like we used to back in high school. We all go to different colleges now, so it's rare that we get time like this. We ended up planning a weekend beach trip to Ocean City. Jason's family owns a small beach house there that they don't use much, and he got permission for us to stay there for a few days. It was nothing fancy, just a 2-bedroom place a couple blocks off the sand, but it was perfect for what we needed. Just time to relax, party a bit, and catch up. We drove down on a Friday afternoon. The weather was hot, upper 80s, with that heavy humid air that sticks to your skin. It smelled like sunscreen and salt water the second we got into town. We spent the day walking the boardwalk, messing around in some of the arcades, and people watching. The beach was packed with tourists, kids running around with beach balls, families with umbrellas and coolers, and lifeguards constantly yelling at people to move out of the restricted areas. Everything felt normal. It was just a fun summer day. Later, we went back to the house, grilled burgers, had a few drinks, and started playing drinking games. By midnight, we were drunk and bored, and someone, maybe Marcus, suggested we go back to the beach. There's something weirdly appealing about being near the ocean at night. The beach is almost completely empty, the air cools down, and there's just something peaceful about it. We didn't bring much with us, just some hoodies in case we get cold, our phones, and a flashlight Jason grabbed from the kitchen drawer. We didn't plan to swim around or anything, just hang out and maybe walk along the shore. We headed down a side street and onto the wooden boardwalk, then took the steps down to the sand. As expected, it was basically completely deserted. The waves were steady, and the only light came from a few lamps on the boardwalk and the moon behind some clouds. There was barely enough visibility to make out where the water met the shore. We walked along the edge of the surf, occasionally letting the cold water hit our ankles. We joked around, talked about random stuff, and just killed time. After a while, we stopped near one of the lifeguard towers. Those wooden ones they take down at night, and we just laid in the sand looking up at the sky. That's when Jason noticed something. He suddenly sat up and said, "Is that someone walking over there?" We all sat up and looked in the direction he was pointing. At first, I didn't see anything. It just looked like a dark blur near the shoreline. But then, yeah, I saw it. A figure. But it was just a silhouette at that point, walking slowly, right along the edge of where the water touched the sand, probably 50 or 60 yards away. We figured it was just another person out late like us, maybe just going for a walk, but then we noticed that their movement was off. They weren't strolling around like someone enjoying the beach. Their walk was stiff, slow, and almost mechanical. Their arms didn't swing naturally, and their posture was strange. Their head was tilted down, but not fully. It looked like they were staring at the sand, or maybe scanning it. We all stopped talking and just quietly watched them. Something about it put me on edge. I remember whispering, "What the hell are they doing?" Marcus suggested that maybe they're just looking for something. Jason joked that it was probably some drunk tourist who dropped their keys. We kinda laughed it off and went back to messing around, but I kept glancing at the person. A few minutes passed, and I noticed they had stopped moving. They weren't walking anymore. They were standing completely still now, and they were definitely closer, maybe 30 yards away. That's when I started feeling uncomfortable. We tried not to stare or shine our light at them, but it was getting hard to ignore. There was just something off about the entire thing. Marcus finally said, "They've been standing there for like 5 minutes. Who just stands like that?" Then Jason said something that made my stomach drop. He said, "He's not just standing, he's looking at you, Kyle." I didn't know if he was joking or not. I kinda laughed nervously and said, "Nah, he's looking at the sand." But Jason shook his head and said, "No, look closer. His head's tilted at you." That's when Jason pointed the flashlight at him. I didn't even want him to do that, honestly, but he clicked it on and aimed the beam. The light hit the figure for just a second before the battery started dying and it flickered out. But that second was enough. I saw him. He was almost grayish white with no shirt. He was wearing wet jeans, clearly from the ocean. His arms hung completely limp at his sides. His head was tilted at a weird angle. Not broken, but unnatural. And his eyes were wide open, almost bulging. The second that beam of light hit him, he moved, fast. Without any hesitation, he broke into a full sprint straight at us. I can't even describe how unnatural it looked. There was no build-up. He went from standing completely still to running at full speed, almost like he launched forward. All three of us screamed and bolted. We didn't even look back, we just ran. I could hear Marcus behind me, yelling "Go!" as our feet pounded into the sand. My lungs were burning. We ran all the way back to the steps leading up to the boardwalk and didn't stop until we got to the street. Only then did we turn around. But he wasn't there. The beach was empty. There were no footprints behind us, just the sound of waves. We stood there frozen, trying to make sense of it. We didn't talk much on the walk back to the house. When we got inside, we locked all the doors and windows, pulled the blinds shut, and stayed up until the sun came up. None of us could sleep. I kept expecting to hear knocking or see that pale face outside the window, but thankfully it never came. The next morning, we tried to laugh it off again, say it was probably just some cracked out homeless guy trying to scare people, but deep down, none of us believed that. The way he moved, the way he appeared out of nowhere, the lack of footprints, it made no sense. We stayed one more night, but we didn't leave the house. We left early the next morning. Over the next few weeks, we tried to move on, but then Jason texted me one night. He said he'd been having dreams, the same dream over and over. He'd wake up and see the guy standing in the corner of his room, soaking wet, head tilted, just staring at him. No movement, no talking, just standing. I told him that was messed up, but I didn't tell him that I was having the exact same dream. Everything was the same, the guy, the posture, just standing in my room, not moving and not talking. Sometimes I wake up thinking I hear the sound of wet footsteps in my hallway. But when I check, no one's there. Then, last week, almost a year later, I was scrolling through this local Facebook group that posts about stuff going on in Ocean City. Someone uploaded a photo they'd taken the night before from the beach. It was grainy and dark, but I recognized what they were talking about. They said, "Does anyone know who this creepy guy is that I saw standing by the water at like 1 a.m.? I clicked the photo. It was blurry, but I recognized him instantly. Same posture, same pale skin. He was just looking down at the water. The comments chilled me even more. There were dozens of people saying they'd seen him too. Some said he was there for hours. One person said they watched him walk into the water and never came back out. Another said they found wet footprints on their back porch 2 streets from the beach. No prints leading to or from them. I don't know what we saw that night, but I know this. I'll never go back to that beach at night again. I grew up in Massachusetts, and every summer since I could remember, I would spend the 3 months in a classic coastal New England town. You know the type if you've been in that area of the country. I had a big group of friends who always did the same thing, and we would get up to all kinds of shenanigans every day after our respective jobs. I was 19 years old when this happened, like most of my friends, and I had just gotten off of a dockboy job I had. So like any other night, I texted my friends what the plan was, and picked up my friend who I'll call Emerson from his job to go get alcohol, as he was the one with a fake ID. We got the alcohol and went back to the small town where we lived. We decided to get on my family's boat that I was able to take out on my own, to have some beers while we wait for everyone else to finish what they were doing. We drove around the little peninsula we were on to this place where a lot of people anchor and hang out. There were a couple of boats anchored already, and it was about 7 p.m., but it still wasn't unusual. We found a spot between the 2 boats, threw the anchor down, and just chilled and drank. We were having a nice time, listening to the music from the boat to our left, when the one to our right decided to leave, and then eventually the other boat's music shut off. We thought they were going to leave as well, so Emerson and I, in our new drunken state, began to groan and yell to turn the music back on to keep the party going, and a bunch of other stupid stuff like that, but it didn't happen. We were sitting on the bow and started to drink again, before Emerson said, "Dude, look." I turned around to look at the boat and saw 3 people standing on the edge, just looking at us. My first reaction was to laugh because I was drunk, and then I turned back around, but Emerson kept staring at them. Now, admittedly, I don't have a great sense of danger. I tend to be optimistic and lighthearted about most things, but Emerson was obviously uncomfortable. I told him not to worry about it. They were probably just trying to get a better look or something, but he kept looking with an uncomfortable look on his face, which I didn't get at the time. At this point, it's pretty dark, nothing illuminating the area but the lights from their boat, and therefore you couldn't really see who it was, just the silhouettes of these people. After a couple of minutes of trying to get Emerson to snap out of it, I turned back around and saw they were in the same position, staring at us. I thought it was a joke, so I got the megaphone from the compartment over the steering wheel and said, "20 to watch, fellas," which pissed Emerson off because he sensed something wasn't right. I was putting it back when I heard one of them laugh, audibly a man, but something was off about it. It sounded almost sinister. It was slow and low, and it was kind of raspy. It was at that point that I started to feel uncomfortable. Emerson got up and said, "Let's get the hell out of here, bro, this ain't right." But I responded that it was fine. Right after that, we heard 2 splashes in the water from their direction and saw that only 1 silhouette remained on the boat. That made Emerson immediately start pulling the anchor up as I was laughing at the situation and at him, which looking back now was unbelievably stupid. He tried telling me to turn the engine on while I was laughing my ass off watching him pull the anchor up as I was trying to drink my beer. In fact, I was laughing so much that I didn't notice the sound of the 2 people swimming near our boat. Emerson paused and looked at me with the anchor in his hands, which made me pause too. We couldn't see into the water, as it was dark and the lights were off with the boat. I called out hello and got nothing. Even the sound of the splashing water stopped. Right after that, I simultaneously heard Emerson yell, "Oh shit," and a sudden splash of water behind me before I turned and saw someone trying to climb onto the back of our boat. I freaked the fuck out, and while turning the key, I saw a hand grab the railing on the side of our boat near Emerson, who was yelling and holding the anchor up, ready to fight. I finally turned the boat on and instinctively gunned it forward, smashing into the sandbar that was right in front of us. I put it in reverse and drove backwards as fast as possible until we were out of the little bay and back into more open water. I threw it back in neutral, and Emerson and I just looked at each other before he started giving me the "I told you so's" and "you're a dumbass." I fully agreed and said we should go back, at which he agreed. In hindsight, we should have hightailed it back to the boat docks near my house, but for some reason, we decided to pick up everything that was thrown around during our escape. We didn't even finish before I noticed in the direction we just came from, the lights of a boat approaching, and it was approaching fast. I said no fucking way, and jumped back to the steering wheel and pushed full throttle. Our boat is old, so it doesn't go super fast, and even though I was full speed ahead, they were gaining on us. Emerson started to lose it, saying things like, "Who are these guys? What do they want? Why can't they just let us chill on the water?" So I told him to chill out and focused on going straight to the docks. After about 5 minutes, the docks were in sight, but the boat behind us was so close that we could see the bow itself going up and down with the waves. I honestly didn't know what to do. I banged a hard left and got as close to the shore as I could without beaching, and miraculously, the other boat peeled off in the other direction. We breathed sighs of relief, but I still went full speed back to the docks. After docking and being relieved at the fact that there wasn't any damage to the boat, we met up with our friends after that and told them what had happened, and also came up with some theories, like maybe they wanted to rob us, or maybe they wanted to take the boat. We didn't recognize the boat, so they probably weren't from around here. I don't know. I don't like to think about what would have happened. I'm just glad we didn't find out. I do know that I'm thankful for Emerson being there. Without his skepticism, I think things definitely could have taken a turn for the worst. For anyone living in a house, odds are your house has an attic in it. Perhaps the place in your house you spend the least amount of time in. But do you ever hear sounds coming from up there? Sounds that almost make you wonder if something's up there. Of course, it'll usually be dismissed as house settling noises, because who would ever imagine that someone or something would actually be up in your attic, or God forbid on your roof, right? Well, these videos may make you want to install cameras. Jerome and Ashley Kennedy, a Pittsburgh couple, along with their 10-month-old baby, were living comfortably, unbeknownst to what was going on above their heads in their own home. The row house next door that was being renovated was owned by 73-year-old Robert Havrilla, who's described by the couple as very reclusive and known to keep to himself. Jerome was in bed one night when he heard noises above him in the attic, the kinds of noises that weren't just house noises. He knew somebody was up there. Then he noticed a light shining through a pipe, as if it were searching for a place to look through. So Jerome installed a surveillance camera in his attic, and a day later, caught on tape was many people's worst nightmare. His neighbor Robert in his attic, carrying a power drill, looking into the bedroom. His neighbor had made a removable wall to gain access to their attic. It wasn't just the attic though. Jerome also found perfectly round holes in the common wall between the two row houses. The shapes indicate that Robert the neighbor was drilling holes through the wall. Cops were called, and Robert was charged with stalking and trespassing, which he pled not guilty to. Robert's attorney made a statement that his client had no bad intentions. He claims he was in the attic for maintenance reasons connected to his renovations, not to peep on anyone or do anything malicious. Anybody with half a brain would know this is BS. The many holes drilled in the common wall and through the ceiling in the attic were without a doubt meant to spy on his neighbors. Strangely enough, it appears Robert was aware of the camera that Jerome had placed, as he looks right at it in this frame, so why he continued to do what he did is unknown. This anonymously submitted video to a channel called Handle Bandle starts with a young guy explaining how the dry boxed food that he and his girlfriend had left in the garage was mysteriously torn open and scattered across the floor.
Door open in the front, or the back door open, but when we were still moving our food in, we left a lot of our box food here in the garage, and when we came out, I think it was a couple days ago, I think it was a Thursday in the morning, the boxed food, the dry food that we had, was all torn open and scattered across the garage floor. Since then we sweeped it out and cleaned it up and everything, but something got in here and tore a big hole in the side of some of those boxes. But anyway, with this new camera, hopefully I can catch something on video. Maybe even put it up on YouTube, we'll see.
Obviously, it could have been any number of wild animals. So in an effort to catch the animal in action the next time it happens, to hopefully help put an end to it, the guy starts to record anytime he hears noises outside. So the following night, the guy and his girlfriend hear some sounds on the roof while watching TV. So he looks out his window with his camera's light on in an effort to see if he can find the source of the sounds.
So we were just laying here watching The Office by the window up here. And we're on the second floor. And I mean, we hear noises out here pretty often, but you can see how high up we are. We hear noises out here, but nothing like what we just heard, so I think it might be worth looking into. I gotta get a flashlight. I can't see anything. I can't really describe exactly what it sounded like, but almost like some kind of a screech.
When the window doesn't provide a good view of what it could be, he decides to go outside for a better view, and this is what he sees.
Alright, let's see. The fuck is that? What in the fuck? Wait a minute. Hey!
It's half ahead of what looks to be either some kind of creature or perhaps somebody wearing a mask. He goes back inside to gain access to the roof through his window to get a closer look. As he climbs up, he hears a snap, then looks to see the head again, still staring at him, causing him to possibly fall off the roof.
Where the hell did it go?
No other information is known of this video. Was it some kind of creature? Some people in the comments were saying it could be an owl. Others think it was a person in a mask with malintent, possibly trying to break into the house. And some believe this was footage of a rake. Imagine being home alone at night as a teenager in a big empty house, and imagine that you start hearing noises from up in the attic. That's exactly what happened to 17-year-old Stephen Braun. While playing video games in the living room, Stephen heard thumping sounds from up in the attic. He called his dad, who was at work, and his dad sounded concerned and told him to go upstairs and check on the hot water heater, which is actually in their attic, a very uncommon place to find a water heater. Stephen's dad was worried that something was wrong with the water heater and that the sounds he was hearing were coming from it. So Stephen obliged and proceeded to go up into the attic, but not without recording. As Stephen checked the water heater and saw that it was completely fine, he then appeared to be leaving the attic, and that's when he heard a sound that caught his attention. As Stephen heard something come from inside a large, long box, he took a closer look at it and saw someone's eye peeking out one of the holes. Understandably, the 17-year-old was probably in shock and unable to do anything besides stop recording and run out of the attic. He says he locked himself in his room to call his dad, and his dad simply told him to hang up and call 911, and that's what he did. As Stephen was in his room, he heard the footsteps of someone leaving the attic and then running down the stairs of the house and out the front door. As has clearly happened way too many times before, by the time police showed up, it was way too late to catch the intruder. Oddly enough, nothing was stolen from the attic or the rest of the house, but it's unknown for how long exactly someone was up in the attic, or what they were doing up there. In this video you're about to see, a young couple who just recently moved into their new home started hearing noises from up above in the attic, so the man decides to go up there with a light and camera and check it out. The man looks around for several minutes but doesn't see anything out of the ordinary. As the wife is clearly very distressed and scared, the man maintains a calm, reassuring demeanor about the situation. As the man descends back down the ladder, the woman keeps recording and inadvertently catches something disturbing on video. what appears to be the wrinkled, gray face of an old man, peering down at the couple for a very brief moment with an eerie expression. It quickly disappears back into the darkness above, going undetected by the couple. Some people believe that it may have been a homeless elderly man who was taking refuge in the couple's attic. However, given the small size of the attic, it would be very unlikely for the man not to have spotted a squatter up there. In the early hours of the morning on July 14th, 2011, Josue Silva started hearing noises coming from his roof that he had been hearing the night before as well. This footage is over 10 years old now, and the person who recorded this didn't have much money to afford a better camera, and high-quality cameras weren't as easily available back then. Josue swears that the footage you're about to see is legitimate.
I've been hearing some noises on my roof tonight. Hear that? Hear that? Yesterday I heard the same thing, but I didn't want to come out. The camera wasn't charged. I can hear something up there. Hear that? Hear that? Oh my God. Here, gotta climb on the... These are the shingles. Oh my God!
After seeing this rake-like creature, Josue falls from the roof from shock. He grabbed his rifle and returned to his roof, but the creature was no longer there. The creature seems to be bald with a large round head, but no facial features can be seen.
What you're about to hear about are 4 diary or journal entries left behind with disturbing backstories. It was a typical Wednesday night at home for 9-year-old Elizabeth Olton and her family when there was a knock at the door, and it was 6-year-old Emma Bustamante who lived across the woods looking for Elizabeth to come play. It was October 21st, 2009, and the sun would set at 6:30 p.m. Elizabeth's mother knew she'd be back on time for dinner because she was deathly afraid of the dark, and the woods that separate their homes turn into a scary place for little kids at night. But at 6 o'clock, Elizabeth hadn't made it home. Immediately, Elizabeth's mom calls her neighbors home. They tell her Elizabeth is not there. Elizabeth had her cell phone with her, yet she hadn't been answering any of her mom's non-stop calls, which was a huge red flag. It was later found out that when Elizabeth left Emma and started her journey out of the woods home, she was allegedly diverted by Emma's half-sister Alyssa, who called Elizabeth on her cell phone and redirected her back to Alyssa's house. Alyssa then led Elizabeth into the woods, and since Elizabeth was afraid of the dark and knew who Alyssa was, she likely trusted the 15-year-old. But Elizabeth couldn't have anticipated what was going to happen. Alyssa brutally killed the little girl, slashing her on the neck and arms, then being fatally stabbed. Police would investigate Alyssa's room and made many crude findings. The walls were covered with bizarre writings, some in pen, while others, it appeared, were in blood. In one corner of the room, there was a poem about cutting, and in another corner of the room were crude sketches of people harming themselves. But the most disturbing finding in the room was Alyssa's diary, specifically her most recent diary entry. It had been scribbled over with blue pen, but investigators would later use a blue light to finally reveal her last entry on the day Elizabeth disappeared. And it read, "I just fucking killed someone. I strangled them and slit their throat and stabbed them. Now they're dead." I don't know how to feel at the moment. It was amazing. As soon as you get over the "oh my god, I can't do this" feeling, it's pretty enjoyable. I'm kinda nervous and shaky right now though. Okay, I gotta go to church now, lol. This diary entry was as damning as it could get. Alyssa eventually admitted to the murder during her interrogation.
We need to have it all come out now. How did you kill her? How did she die? 9-year-old girls don't just die.
We were messing around, and she fell back and hit her head.
Was her throat cut?
Yeah. Oh.
Grandma?
Oh my God.
The diary entry truly painted the terrifying picture of a ruthless, young murderer that she was. She had been sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Elizabeth's body was found in a shallow grave, one of two that Alyssa admitted to digging a week before the murder, giving rise to the speculation that her twin brothers were the original intended victims. The diary entry was presented as evidence that she should get life in prison regardless of her young age. Believe it or not, there was a possibility that she could only get 10 years in prison, but the diary entry was the icing on the cake that solidified her fate. Both Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris had rather chilling diary entries. Dylan and Eric killed 13 students and 1 teacher, along with injuring another 20. The two's diary entries provided the world with a glimpse into their minds before committing a mass murder. Starting with Dylan, he clearly was suffering from low self-esteem and depression. He really seemed to desperately want friends and to be accepted, but his peers refused to accept him. Dylan was big into writing actually, and he had many diary or journal entries. One of his final entries, though, was a brief outline of his plan on the day of the shooting, even revealing what he planned to wear during it. Walk in, set bombs at 11:09, for 11:17 leave, set car bombs, drive to Clementi Park, gear up, get back by 11:15, park cars, set bombs for 11:18, get out, go to outside hill, wait. This was clearly an outline for the schedule he had for the day of the attack. Eric Harris's motivations were not much different at all from Dylan's. There were rants on old online forums from Eric from as far back as 1996. He would go off online about everything he felt was unfair in this world, about how he had never been accepted and how he just wanted to fit in. He would sprinkle in some dark song lyrics into his rants occasionally. Eric had drawings of the school and plans for their massacre in his diary, and drawings of guns were found all over his diary. The final entry, though, is rather upsetting and truly shows where Eric's motivation came from. I hate you people for leaving me out of so many things. And no, don't effing say, well, that's your fault, because it isn't. You people had my phone number, and I asked and all, but no. No, 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 don't let the weird-looking Eric kid come along. Eric also removed any possible blame on his family, music, or video games for his actions, and he took sole responsibility for what he was soon going to do. The diaries of both Dylan and Eric show how they felt unwanted and displaced in the world. They also show the negative effects that loneliness, social rejection, and untreated mental illness can lead to. What you're about to hear may sound like a diary entry written by Charles Manson or some other serial killer. It actually appeared in a diary kept by a young girl named Pearl Moen. I stabbed an innocent woman to death earlier today. Technically yesterday since it's 1 a.m. It was absolutely fantastic. Murder gives me a high unlike any other. It feels like this crisp unreality flashing and sparkling, adrenaline and shock, fight or flight mode. How do I even go about describing it? The whole thing was unreal. I'm so proud of myself. I stabbed her like 20 times. Maybe more, I wasn't counting. She screamed and grabbed at me, saying what the fuck. Help, leave. For now, I should explain why. Other than the fact that I'm a homicidal psychopath, I have a deep hatred towards people right now. Yesterday I lost my other gold ring I've worn all my life on a chain around my neck, as it was ripped off by a girl I was murdering. Fate is weird. She was mistaken about one thing though. The woman she stabbed did not die. Pearl Moen was 17 years old when she attacked a random nurse and stabbed her 21 times. A complete stranger to her, mind you. Pearl had been hiding behind the bushes in a park where the victim and her date were wrapping up their evening. When the woman's date left to use the bathroom, Pearl attacked, eventually leaving the woman she thought was dead. She then took to her diary to write about how thrilling and fun the experience was for her. While her victim survived the horrific attack, Pearl remained on the run for 3 months before law enforcement finally caught up with her after a neighborhood association handed out flyers with a sketch of Pearl, and eventually Pearl's own mother would call the police and report that she believed her daughter matched the description of the suspect seen in the flyers. When her bedroom was searched and officers found her diary, there was no question that it was she who committed the brutal and vicious attack.
Pearl's victim told her in court that she was glad she stabbed her rather than a child, an elderly person, or someone who could not defend themselves. The victim said she was able to save herself because of her medical training. The teenager described herself as a homicidal maniac in her diary, and she definitely proved that to be true. Pearl took a plea deal and is currently serving a 15-year sentence for attempted murder. In 2018, an unnamed woman shared disturbing excerpts from a diary she claimed was kept by her obsessive male colleague for a whole year. In the journal, her coworker apparently noted everything she had worn to work and told her how they'd spend their lives together. One of the entries even ends with the message, "I'm coming for you, my love, coming for us." The woman, who wished to remain anonymous, revealed she worked alongside the man for 3 years, but for the longest time, she never had any idea her coworker was interested in her. It wasn't until the woman left the firm to start a new job that she claims he was arrested for camping outside her apartment for 3 days. Her address was given to him by a worker in the HR department, resulting in him camping outside of her apartment for days. That employee was fired after word got out. After getting the woman's address, the obsessed coworker left work at lunchtime, bought a bunch of things he thought would win the woman over, and came to her apartment, where he camped outside for days until a resident reported him and police made him leave the premises. The woman wasn't there. She was flying to another city to rent an apartment for her new job. The man had also sent her his diary entries, which are pretty disturbing. They read as follows. February 23rd, 2016. Wearing brown wrap dress with silver buckle on belt. 3-inch heels also brown. Hair up, little too much mascara. You and blank were talking about that dumb show, Pretty Little Liars. I tried to get into it, for you. But after 2 seasons, I just couldn't take it anymore. Holy moly, it is some vapid crap. When we are together, I will introduce you to amazing TV and movies. I know you won't mind staying home to raise our children properly. It is what women are built for, after all. Certainly you need to work now, but no fear, my love. I will take care of you the second you are ready. I will lavish you with all you need to support, love, and cherish me and our children. March 29th, 2016. Wearing unknown. I hope you're enjoying your vacation, but I miss you terribly. This week will be pure hell, and I'm counting down the minutes until next Monday. Honestly, I thought of going with you. I'm sure if you saw me there in the resort, your heart would have been bursting with love, but maybe not. I'm sorry for doubting you, but on that tiny chance that you weren't super happy to have me there, parentheses, I can't be part of your friend's wedding, right? I couldn't put you through that. Sometimes it seems like you're close to acknowledging our true love. Other times, it frustrates me. I'm sorry, but it does. I don't want to be mad, so I wait. But not forever, silly. Heck, this could be for the best. Seeing holy matrimony could be the push you need. I hope so, because I love you, and you love me, soon. November 23rd, 2016. Wearing Who the Hell Knows. How can you do this? How? How can you abandon our one true love? How can you abandon our life together? How can you doom our future generations to nothingness? How? I am bereft without you, adrift at sea. I can't be without you. I won't be without you. I will follow you to the ends of the universe. Know that. I will find you and I will help you understand. For us, to complete the truly most important relationship ever. I see I need to take control. I wanted to wait for you, but I see that like other women, you need your man to take charge. No more waiting. I will show you what you have been too blind to see with your own eyes. What has been sitting patiently, listening, watching, documenting you for posterity. After she shared these chilling diary entries with Imager and Reddit, the woman said she was able to finally move on with her life after moving to another city and undergoing counseling. In her Reddit post, she wrote, I received these journals and pen, flowers, candy, and a huge stuffed bear from my former cubicle neighbor at a job I worked at for 3 years. As you'll see, the guy is freaking nuts. Our cubicles were next to each other the whole time I worked at this firm. We were kind of friendly the first 6 months I was there. Then he asked me on a date. I very politely declined. Very firm that I don't date coworkers and whatnot. After that, besides for a friendly hello, he said almost nothing to me. We were on different teams, so it wasn't a big deal to me. But after I turned him down, he started keeping this journal. Referring to the first entry, she added, this entry also takes a turn into the crazy end. Up until now, he called me pet names and talked as if we were currently dating. This is the first time that he really reveals that he's planned the rest of our lives out for us. The last 9 months of the journals get really bad, which are the entries you just heard. According to the woman, The man is currently in jail serving a 2 to 5 year sentence for an attempted kidnapping. Number 6. The crew of the Sarah Joe. The Sarah Joe was a 17-foot motorboat that at the time 20-something-year-old Robert Mulakany acquired in the 1970s. He named it after his mom Sarah and dad Joe. The boat took 5 strong, healthy young men out to sea 40 years ago, and it wasn't until more than a decade later that their boat was found on the shores of one of the smallest of the Marshall Islands. But the men were not with the boat. Oddly enough, there was a shallow grave that contained the bones of one of the fishermen, but no other clues or signs of life. To make their disappearance stranger, oceanographers estimated that it would have only taken the boat about 3 months to drift onto the island, which means the boat, grave, or remaining crew should have been there when a government survey of the island took place in 1983, but they weren't. So we may never actually know what happened to the Sarah Joe and her crew for the 4 years between the disappearance and the survey of the island. Number 5. The missing lighthouse keepers. There was once an isolated island off the coast of Scotland where 3 lighthouse keepers lived and were responsible for keeping the building intact. One day when their monthly supply ship dropped in, the island was silent, no response from the lighthouse keepers. Eventually the captain and some crew members went to investigate and found the suspiciously empty lighthouse. 2 of the 3 waterproof coats were missing from their hangars, and the kitchen was left in a state as if people left in a hurry. The lighthouse log only added one mystery to the situation. The log described how one of the keepers wouldn't talk, and the other continuously cried for hours. All of this pain and fear seemed to be coming from what was referred to as a powerful storm looming in the distance. However, this begs the question, why were they so scared of a simple storm? They should have been safe in the brand new lighthouse, right? The log goes on to talk about how they all sat close together and prayed for the storm to be over. The final log states the storm has passed, the skies are calm, and God is over all. Their bodies were never found, and the cause of their deaths are still a mystery to this day. The most accepted theory is that they somehow got swept out to sea during the storm, never to be seen again. But one final detail remains, one that scared the captain and his crew to the bone. The powerful storm described in the log didn't exist. There were no storms reported in the area. In fact, the skies were calm all day. Number 4. The death of Chris Kremers and Lisanne Froon. Both girls went on a study abroad trip to Panama, where they went missing on a hike. After several weeks, some of their remains were found miles up the river from where they began their hike, along with a backpack that contained their belongings. The creepy part of it is that a camera in their backpack started out with pictures that they took of each other hiking, and then suddenly goes into over 100 pictures of what appeared to be nighttime pictures of rocks near a riverbed, the back of someone's head, and just pure blackness. The dark pictures appear to be taken many days after they went missing. There's a lot of theories as to why they went missing, what finally ended their lives, and why they were taking pictures, but there's no solid answer. According to their cell phone use records, they had been alive in the forest for days after they got lost, trying to get a signal from their phones to call emergency help. Number 3. The death of Kendrick Johnson. Kendrick Johnson was found rolled up in wrestling mats in Lowndes High School, and his death was ruled an accident. The official story is that he was reaching into the rolled-up wrestling mats to get his shoe and got stuck and died. An initial autopsy concluded that the death was accidental, and Johnson's family wasn't happy with that, so they had an independent autopsy performed. This second autopsy showed that he died from blunt force trauma, and there's actually blood in many of the crime scene photos. People believe the conspiracy between the school and police is keeping a lot of information from the family. Video footage from the gym during the time of his death is missing, which makes this mystery all the more unsettling. Number 2. The disappearance of Amy Lynn Bradley. Amy was an American citizen who went missing during a Caribbean cruise on the Royal Caribbean Rhapsody of the Seas. On the morning of March 24, 1998, Amy had been drinking in the dance club with the ship's band Blue Orchid. One of the band's members, Alistair Douglas, known as Yellow, said he parted with Amy at about 1 a.m. Sometime between 5:15 and 5:30, Amy's father Ron saw her asleep on the deck. When he got up at 6 a.m., she was no longer there. There were possible sightings of Amy in Curaçao in 1998 and 1999.
2 Canadian tourists reported seeing a woman resembling Amy on the beach in 1998. The woman's tattoos were allegedly identical to Amy's. A member of the Navy said he saw Amy in a brothel in 1999, and he claimed she told him that her name was Amy Bradley and that she begged him for help. There was another potential sighting in 2005, when the witness claimed she was seen in a department store restroom in Barbados. Amy's mother and father appeared on an episode of Dr. Phil. An image of a young woman resembling Amy that was emailed to her parents was shown on the show, and it suggests that she may have been sold into sex slavery. And number 1, the disappearance of Kenny Veach. Kenny Veach was a well-experienced hiker in Nevada who found a cave he described as the M Cave, as it was opened in the shape of an M. He claimed he heard very unusual noises from the cave and found it suspicious, as it was located 6 miles south of a top-secret airbase. As he began to enter the cave, he claimed his whole body began to vibrate. The more he went into the cave, the worse the vibrating became. He said he suddenly became very afraid and hightailed it out of there. He recorded another trip to find the cave again and catch it on video, but this video ended up being a bust. He later went back to where he found the cave again and has not been seen since. His phone was found in an abandoned mine entrance, but no body or evidence that he had gone down into the mine. He posted this video about the cave a few days before he went missing.
And I'm looking for a cave that I found, and I didn't have a sidearm when I was here before, and something about that cave just spooked me. Out of all the caves I've ever gone in, this one just made my body vibrate. The closer I got to it, the crazier my body felt, and I was like, all right, I'm not gonna go in there right now, but I'm coming back someday. And I talked to some people on YouTube, and I told them, hey, I'm coming out here, you know, because they kind of called my hand on it. So I don't know if there's going to be anything to it, but it might be interesting. If I can find it, I got to relocate it, and this is a big mountain range I'm in, and I'm on foot, you know. My truck's way out there. There's no roads, there's no trails. It's a pretty rough terrain. So hopefully I'll find it. It's shaped like a big M. It's a big cave that looks just like a gigantic M.